Make sure it's not going yet. Oh, yay. Okay, it is going. Yay. Awesome. Hi, everybody. I have a friend with me today. We're excited to be jumping on with you guys. This is my friend Pilar. She is going to be chatting with us all about human design today, and we're going to be talking a little bit about what it is. So if you guys have questions, leave them in the comments, and then we will go back through and answer some questions at the end. But go ahead and just kick us off. Tell us who you are, what it is that you do, and give us all the fun things.
Hi, my name is Pilar Lesko. I am an energetics and embodiment coach. I mainly help people. I help people in a lot of different realms, but when I boil it down, we're doing a lot of mindset work, a lot of looking into the energetics of you as a human and your life, and a lot of embodiment work to really anchor everything in. Currently, I'm pretty obsessed with power and money. And reclaiming those things. And I have been studying human design for almost 6 years. The system has been like one of my most trusted allies, and my business actually began with me sort of being energetically forced into being a human design reader. So at this point, I still give human design readings. I am much more discerning with who I give them to, and I don't have as many spots available, but I still do that. And in my coaching, human design is a huge facet of how I coach. And I actually have the belief that when you're coaching, especially in the realm of business, if you're not taking human design into consideration, you're doing the client a disservice, because we all work so differently. And the resounding message that comes through human design is you can't look outside of you to other people to see how you should be doing things or how you work. Yeah.
Like it. So kind of give us like the overview of human design. So I feel like a lot of people are starting to hear about it more, and they may be looking up to see what design type they are, but that's about as far, because you look at the chart and you're kind of like, what the fuck is this? And then get stopped at it. So maybe give us like an overview, the types of it, and just like some history.
So the system itself, I think it was designed to be abstract in a way. Like, it's not easily digestible when you first look at that. And I think that was all part of the intention, because when human design first came through, there was a whole group of people that trained with Ra, the man who channeled it. And they were sort of like the wisdom keepers. And the whole business that was set up around Ra was set up in a way where you sort of had to pass through very high monetary barriers to get to the wisdom of human design. So we're at this point where it's sort of just like bursting through the barriers. Like it's no longer hidden. It's something that a lot of people are tapping into and able to speak the language of. And there you can still go walk through those barriers and go through the trainings and really get to like the foundations of the wisdom, or like I would say the deeper levels. But it's at this point where it is just like pushing through the surface. And I'll tell you, like when I first found this system, people weren't super interested in it. It wasn't like astrology was more hot. And this was just kind of like, that doesn't really make sense. I'm not really sure. And I've heard a couple other human design people say, and I totally get behind this, that like it's coming through now because now we're ready. We are shifting, and like human design backs this up, into a society where we are coming out of like the mental and the logical and the rational, and we are all moving towards more feeling, intuition, energetic based beings. And this is a system of energetics. So it makes perfect sense to me that it's like coming online for people as we're moving towards that shift. The system itself was channeled in, I want to say 1986. I could be a couple years off. By a man named Ra Uru Hu, and that's not his real name. And he was meditating. I'm pretty sure he was in like a 3 to 4 day meditation, and the system just downloaded through him. And like the sense I get is this is ancient intelligence. like this, he was the vessel to receive this wisdom. And then he sort of became the man that brought it forward. And like, I'll tell you, people thought he was crazy. Can I curse? Okay. You're good. People thought he was fucking crazy. And that was actually part of his design, was to be like somebody with a big vision and with messages from the future. So it combines and synthesizes Western astrology, 2 different versions of it, the prenatal and the natal chart, the Kabbalah tree of life, the Chinese I Ching, and a more sort of, I don't want to say evolved, but it's the chakra system, but splayed out in a more like pragmatic way of like, okay, we have emotions and that's an energy center. So it's the Hindu chakra system, but through the lens of human design, our energetic system has been evolving. So we've been gaining centers. So the system itself, and like, I'm distilling this down in like what I hope is the most simplified, digestible way possible. It spits out this chart that gives you your energetic makeup. So when you're looking at it and when you're starting to look at different charts, you can see how based on how we're made up energetically, we start to distill into different types because our energy works differently. So we have different groups of people that are designed to do different things. And the really cool thing about this system is like, you can go really far in on a very like interpersonal level, and you can zoom out and see how transpersonally this system was designed to bring us into harmony and symbiosis, like as a collective. So I say that because you can sort of look and see how based on the types, it's designed so that in a group of people, everybody has like their perfect place where they work seamlessly. And if we were all living in tune with our design, we would have these like pods of people everywhere where everyone had their role and everybody knew that person's role. And there was no question about like what we're all designed to do. So I always tell projectors, in a world where everybody was living their design, we wouldn't have to do anything except sit around. Like we could literally just hang out and people would be like, oh, we need guidance. We're going to go talk to them. So there's 5 types. There are generators, manifesting generators. Sometimes those types are smushed into generators. They are both generators. Manifesting generators work differently though, but they're still generators. Projectors, manifestors, reflectors. You want like the quick
just like a little like an overview. Quick and dirty.
So generators and manifesting generators, they're sort of like the builders of society. I don't really like using the term workers because it's not about work, it's about life force and that they have it. So they have the life force energy that is here to keep the planet moving. And like the term generator comes from the fact that they generate life force energy. And that seems like if you just hear that, you're like, don't we all do that? And no, we don't. Only those 2 types can do that consistently. So they have the energy to create, to build, to do, to bring like big projects into fruition. Like when you look at the world, especially the Western world, and you stand back and you observe at like the way in which just technology and architecture and all these other systems are evolving, it's because of the sacral energy on the planet. So they're just like, it's a lot of people will find out they're a generator or an MG and be like, oh, well, I'm not special. But actually you're like so fucking special because you hold the energy of the planet. And a lot of us need you to start using that in a way that excites you and in a way that you're in alignment with, because it's going to give those of us who don't have energy. So that's like a very basic overview. Manifesting generators, you guys are like the sports cars. You move really fast. You can do a lot of things at once. You guys are like the super builders. And then obviously within both of these types, you're going to get the nuances and the different ways you work. But what's most important for both of these types to know is that your energy is your most important resource. I always tell them it's your highest currency and you need to start treating it like that, and you need to invest it very, very wisely. Right now we have a case of a lot of people with sacrals not investing their energy wisely. And I mean, the like simplest way to put it is like go where you're excited and invest your energy there. And as much as you can, like pull back your energy in places where it's not fulfilling you. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And when you say, just like for them, like everybody listening, like when you say with sacrals or like without, like, can you?
Generators and manifesting generators have the sacrals.
Mm-hmm.
So when I'm saying the people with sacrals, it's that group. So projectors, now we're moving out of people with sacrals. Actually, I should go to manifestors next. So generators, manifesting generators, and manifestors are all classed in this group called energy types. And that's because they are able to create their own energy. Manifestors, I call them the keepers on the bridge because they don't have sacral centers, but they are able to create energy. So I don't like, and this is just me, I don't agree that they're energy types. I think they're like this, they're on the bridge between non-energy and energy. Manifestors, in my opinion, are the most misunderstood type on the planet today. And that's because as a society, we are not in a place where we can like consciously recognize what they're here to do anymore. So they were the leaders. They were like the pharaohs and the kings. They represent pure, raw creation and initiation power. So manifestors, man, I don't know how to just do this simply because I have so much to say about them. The simplest way I can put it is that if you are a manifestor, what's really important to know is that like you are power incarnate, and it's very likely you are dimming that in some way. It's like 100% likely that you're dimming your impact. You're not initiating and creating as much as you should, and you're trying to blend in because you've been told that that power is not okay. But a manifestor exalted is totally okay with both starting a lot of things and not finishing them, and also impacting people in a way like it's total tough love. Like manifestors are the cue ball on the pool table that are designed to knock everybody into place. So like if you think back to how the pharaohs worked, pharaohs sat above their people and they were able to see when things were out of line, and they would give the instruction to get things back into place, and they would start things, and they had builders who would see the projects through. So manifestors are at a place now where they're like, what am I supposed to do? It's all about like, for manifestors specifically, like coming back into that power, and then meeting all the conditioning that comes up along the way. And that's something I should add, and this is kind of backtracking, but human design is like perfectly set up to bring up all of your conditioning that around where you don't believe you should be this. So you meet a lot of resistance when you start working with your design. And that could be anything from like, this feels really uncomfortable because I've never listened to my emotions before, or I've been told I need to work 10 hours a day to feel worthy. So you're constantly meeting all of the conditioning that is standing in the way of coming back into your design. And that's why this is like a very holistic system, because if you want it to, it can bring up all of your shit. Projectors. So projectors are the guides. Projectors are here to see very deeply into people, understand what's going on with them, and then guide their energy. They're sort of like, I mean, this might upset some people, but I would say that they're like the medicine people, in the sense that like they come in, they work really well on a one-on-one basis. They see you very deeply. They can have very intense and confronting energies, because they can actually like, they're designed to see things in you that you can't see. And that's part of why they're here. So projectors get a lot of resistance from people's egos around like, that's really uncomfortable that you know that and I don't. Yeah.
We're both projectors.
Projectors are working with less energy. So when I started, generators and MGs, they have a lot of energy. Manifestors, they don't have as much. Their hack is to create and initiate, and then they gain energy, but they work in bursts. So manifestors still, they need to burst and then they need to retract. Projectors have a very small window available to them. In a perfect world, they would work 3 to 4 hours a day. So the thing about people who don't have sacrals, manifestors, projectors, and reflectors is that we can get around other sacrals and we can use their energy. That, however, is never sustainable for us. We need to get out of other people's auras to see how much energy we're actually working with, because oftentimes it's not as much as we thought it was. So projectors, when they find human design, are usually like tired as fuck, sick in some way, and have been pretending to be generators their entire life. Because society is set up in a way where we're taught you need to work like a generator to be worthy or to be successful or to fit in. So projectors usually find the system, and as I said, that manifestors are the most misunderstood. I think for projectors and reflectors, it hits them really hard. Like it's like a oh my God, yes, like this is so true. I feel so validated. So projectors are the guides. They can see very deeply. For them to work, though, for their magic to really influence, people need to see, recognize, and invite them. So one of the most difficult like pieces of conditioning for a projector to overcome is to learn to sit back and wait. And like in that sitting back and waiting, there's an embodiment piece around, it's not just sitting back and waiting, but then thinking to yourself, like, I hope somebody comes. It's sitting back and waiting and knowing what you can do and knowing the power you have and being totally okay with holding that until the right person is ready for you. I'm going to backtrack really quick and add that, because this is like kind of important. Generators and manifesting generators, their strategy is to respond. So they need things to pop up into their reality, and then they need to listen to whatever their authority is around whether they're interested in that. And then that's like the green light, it's time to do this. So that could be anything from hearing something on a podcast to like somebody saying something to you in conversation. Manifestors are the only type that can actually initiate without waiting for anything. So they can just go. They don't need a person. They don't need they don't need to hear something. They can just move and initiate. They have pure initiation power. Projectors need to wait for recognition, sight, or an invitation. So that's usually really annoying for projectors. That's part of how they work, but we're other people oriented. So like so much of our magic is that it's the recognition when other people see it. And oftentimes projectors are really interested in helping everyone, or they're really interested in like, our aura will sometimes communicate, I know something, will you please ask me? And that's always wrong for us. We were designed to literally just wait. And when that person comes up and sees us and gives us that sight or that recognition, we know, like you can feel it in your body. It's like, okay, now I can do this. So that's projectors. Did I do the percentages? Do you want me to?
Yeah, maybe do the percentages.
Okay, manifesting generators and generators make up 70%, and their split is like, I think it's pretty even. It's like 30, 33 or something, or 30, 35. Manifestors are anywhere from 7 to 9%. Projectors are anywhere from 20 to 23%. And then reflectors are around 1% of the population. So reflectors don't get talked about as much. Like there's not as much detail given to them because there's so few of them. So reflectors are, I call them the sacred mirrors. So their role is literally to reflect back to either the person they're with, the group they're in, or society at large where we're at. So a lot of reflectors have a lot of near-death experiences, or some of them will pass away really young, or like at an age where it's like, why did that happen? Or they will like, it's really common for them to have had a ton of health issues. And the way you can see that is if you look at society and at consciousness right now, or in the last, let's say like 20 years, reflectors are showing us where we're at always. So a reflector works in a really interesting way where they're purely open. So when they're in groups, they're just taking in whatever is going on in that group. So it's really common for like, if you're ever with a reflector, it's really normal to hear them be like, oh, I feel really good. This feels really good. And then all of a sudden it's like, I don't feel good anymore. Something doesn't feel good. Whenever there's a reflector in the group, like you want to be constantly checking in with the feedback that they're giving you, because that's really, really good feedback about what's going on. Reflectors have like if you did choose to incarnate as a reflector, I feel like all of our missions are very sacred, but there is such a like pure sacredness to your mission because you decided to not have anything that's consistent within you. You decided to be like the ultimate mirror for all of us. So reflector strategy is to wait a lunar cycle to make a decision. And like, that's insane, but that's actually how they work. And you can see as we get into the types that are at lower percentages, they work in ways that are in such opposition to how society at large works right now. So reflectors, like, I mean, I could go in so many different directions with this, but I have two close friends who are reflectors, and I actually traveled with one, and I got to sort of observe like a reflector moving through different places, and they remind me of children in the sense that like there's such an innocence to their energy because it's all just being absorbed. So it's really common for a reflector to have like 300 different hats, and depending on who they're with, think that they're meant to be that thing or think that this thing is meant for them. And they're sort of like just here to be these like really fluid samplers. And a lot of us have that energy. Like if you have an open G center or an open identity, this applies to you in the same way. And I call it like the sandbox method, where like life is a playground and you're meant to go to the things that feel really good. And as soon as you recognize that it doesn't feel good, or maybe you went to that thing from a place of over-identifying with it or conditioning, you move away and you go to the next thing. Do you want me to say more about reflectors?
No, I think that's good.
Okay.
I was gonna pull up the chart, and just like, I don't know if this is like the site that you use, but it's the fastest one. And then maybe like we can go through like what some of the things mean, like the different. So I mean, if you want to start, I'm sure you know some of the things without looking at this.
What do you mean when you say those things?
You know, like
the centers,
like the like split definition, or like some like the different definitions or the strategies, like explaining maybe like what overall some of them are.
Okay,
if that makes sense. While I pull up mine, and then maybe we can share it, and that might help. Because I know like for a lot of people, like when they look at it, there's just like so many different things, and you're like, I don't know what all this stuff means.
So something I will say, like if you're first, when you're first finding the system, all that matters is energy type and authority, and everything else is awesome. And it's really fun to learn about, but energy type and authority are the foundational pieces that you want moving. So it can take, I should say too, and like, this feels really important for me to keep bringing up. Is this you?
Yeah.
Okay. Human design is an experiment. And as the system is growing and as more readers are appearing and as the information is flowing, I'm seeing that that's not being talked about as much as I feel it should. Because like, let's just take a moment to think about the word experiment. Experimentation is playful, and it's curious, and it's inquisitive, and it's not militant. It's about like, okay, this is what the system says works for me. I'm going to experiment with that. I'm going to see what happens. And it's said that when you find human design, if you decide to work with the system, you enter into a 7-year deconditioning experiment. So that alone is something that's really important to keep in mind, because there is so much conditioning to shed that according to the system, it takes up to 7 years to even fully come into alignment with your design. And I can tell you, I've been with the system for almost 6 years, and like, I'm still meeting parts of me that have resistance. Okay, so where do you want me to go?
Maybe just like explain like what some of these things are, like in like a general sense, and maybe
can other people see this?
Yeah, other people can see this. Now I shared it.
Okay.
So this is my chart for everybody. It's all out there.
Let's see. I mean, if I were to go with the most foundational piece, aside from you being a projector, it's that you have splenic authority. Do you know what that means?
I heard like a little bit. So maybe if you want to, because you said those are like the two like the biggest foundational pieces. So maybe talk about that.
The authority, for like everyone who knows what their authority is or is looking at their chart, authority is like your North Star. Like, this is what you listen to. So energy type is, how do you work? What's your strategy? What's your theme? How does your energy work in the world? How do you make decisions? X, Y, Z. Authority is when things come into your reality, when you like magnify things in, how do you proceed with deciding if it's right for you? So the whole thing about human design is this is a system of energetics. So everything we're talking about is through the lens of energetics, and everyone has auras, and like you can look at this through so many different lenses, not just human design, how we're creating our reality. We're attracting things in based on who we were, who we are, what we believe, what we feel, what we think, what we say. We're bringing all of that in. Human design is like this awesome pair of glasses that lets you know, like, okay, how do I now work with what I'm calling in? How do I make my decisions? And how is my energy working in relation to everything else and in relation to other people? So splenic and sacral authority are the two highest authorities. They're the most common. Splenic is pure primal instinctual intuition. So like we both have this. When you're listening for splenic authority, it's when you're first working with it, it's not usually loud. It's actually very quiet. And the cool thing about authorities in human design is every single one is body-based. Nobody is authority of the mind. So that right there is fascinating because it's in such opposition to how we've been conditioned to make decisions. So like the resounding message is everybody needs to be in their body and everybody needs to be a really deep listener when it comes to making decisions. So splenic authority, when you're first working with it, can feel sort of like a quiet whisper or a quiet pull of like, yes, no, do this, do that. I have found that over time, as I've given my intuition more space, it does not feel quiet anymore. It's very loud. And I'm like, yes. So we're in the moment decision makers, and you and I are actually designed like when the spleen, it evolved to keep us safe, and it evolved from like the spleen was really helpful when we were in constant danger. Like it was designed to sort of keep you out of danger and keep you knowing what's right for you in terms of survival. We have evolved to a place now where we're not all trying to survive. So my theory, and this is just my theory, is that the centers are evolving with us as we evolve. So the spleen, we don't necessarily need it anymore to know where our next meal is coming from. And we can now use it to feel like if a client is right for us or not. Mm-hmm. So the spleen is pure intuition. I have heard people say that the spleen, like they'll say it's not psychic and it doesn't give you downloads. And this might be like a different part of my design, but I definitely will get hits on people when they walk in the room of like, that's not right. I now know this about you. Something's weird. Like the spleen is always alerting you about what's going on.
You know, what's interesting. I was just thinking about like with the spleen, because I know we were kind of talking about this earlier when I was saying that I had like Epstein-Barr, and I was obviously like in that place of burnout, is I had an enlarged spleen.
Oh yeah,
during that time too. So just interesting that like some of that stuff you were saying, because that was so the opposite of how I was operating at that time, that I was sick. That some of those things like literally like manifested themselves in my body too.
There is a whole system in human design called primary health system, and it's the body graph broken down through the lens of the physical body, and you can see how your diseases have manifested from places where you were out of alignment with your design.
That's cool.
Yeah. What do you want me to do next? So that was just splenic authority, and there's a ton of authorities.
Can you give just like an overall like definition of like what is profile? Like what is the definite, like what do they just like overall mean?
Of everything on this list?
No, you don't have to go through like everything, because I know that there's like a bunch of different things, but maybe like maybe strategy or profile, like one of those two.
So, okay, type we already talked about. That's energy type. Housed under energy type would also be the strategy and the not self theme. So the strategy is like, how does this energy type work, and what do they need to do to call things in? What do they need to do when it comes to like literally creating their reality and attracting life to them? So for projectors, it's wait for the invitation. The not self theme, I call it like the yellow or red light from the universe. And when you're experiencing your not self theme, it's a sign that you're out of alignment with something. So it can be as grand as like, oh, wow, I'm totally going against the way I work. And it's because of conditioning that I inherited from my lineage. And there's a lot of deep healing that's needed. And it can be as minute as, I did that incorrectly, or like, that was annoying. I'm not going to do it that way next time. But when you're experiencing your not self theme, it's a sign that you do not proceed forward. You need to take a step back and look at what's going on. Authority, we touched on, it's what you listen to. Profile lines. So the way I describe these is that these are two archetypes that you came into this life carrying, and you're always playing them out, and they both have two different spectrums, and you can be hanging out anywhere on the spectrum of your profile lines. But the cool thing about profile lines is like, this is where you really start to see astrology's influence and the archetypal energy in human design. So when you learn about your profile lines, you can see how like you sort of have spent your entire life hanging out on these spectrums, and maybe they were things that you were told was wrong about you, or maybe they were things that you felt like, wow, there's no place for this here. Like, for example, you and I both have a line 3, so we're like cliff jumpers. Like, we like to dive into things. We actually don't do as well hanging back and waiting and like trying to prepare. We like jumping into the fire. We're all trial and error based. So we have to just jump in and see what happens to learn. Conditioning comes into the profile lines pretty heavy. Like, I'm sure there's been points in your life where you have like dimmed that about you out of fear, or out of like, maybe I'm not supposed to be this way. So the profile lines, they again, like once you pass through energy type and authority, like for, especially when you're entering into human design, everything else is just like fun, extra information. Definition is a description of what your centers are doing in terms of how they're connected. So you can be single, split, triple, or quadruple. So you're split because you can see you have two different groups of centers and there's no connection between them. So what that would represent for you is you have like these two different voices, and your processing time is sometimes going to be a bit slower because you have the voice of your mind and your head and your throat. So like what you think and what you say is one voice. And then what your intuition tells you and your like adrenaline energy is another voice. So it's really common when you have split definition to sometimes, like especially before you found the system, just hang out in one area and make your decisions from there. And oftentimes when you have head centers in your definition, it's really attractive to just listen to that voice. Incarnation cross, the way I describe this is it's the slide that you rode into Earth. So I'll always tell people like, a bunch of you got together and were like, let's work on this mission together. And then you all rode that slide in. And you can get like with anything in the system, you can tease it out and get into all the nuances. But like a simplified version is like, if we were to go into your incarnation cross, you could see how everything you've done has been in the name or in relation to like that greater mission. And yeah.
Cool. I love this.
Questions?
This is awesome. Let's see if there's some questions. I know there's some stuff that's popping up. So what, like, I guess, do you have like an overarching piece of advice? Because a lot of people that follow and like engage with me are people that are building businesses. So is there any like good tips that you have for just being aware of this? And like you said, it's a lens, but maybe just having an understanding of like with projectors, for example, like how like many hours or like things to think about, like, cause I, thinking about that. So maybe you have some thoughts.
So I will say, this can get very nuanced based on your specific chart. So there are overarching sort of themes that apply to everyone, but an emotional projector is going to work very differently than like a splenic projector. And like you and I work very differently because you're split, I'm not. We have totally different centers. It becomes very nuanced. And that's why like I'll tell people, once you feel like secure in the foundations, or if you found it and you're like wanting more of a digestible breakdown, getting a reading is really helpful. But if we're just like going off of sort of the objectives of each type, if we're starting with generators and manifesting generators, Something I would say that seems to come online pretty strong in businesses, and this is conditioning that they both really have to work through, is the idea of starting something and not finishing. So generators and manifesting generators, MGs specifically, you guys like to throw a bunch of stuff at the wall and see what sticks. And there's a whole system of thought around how you would parent people in human design. So when you would parent an MG child, you would actually let them pick stuff up and put it down because they need to learn that that's okay. Mm-hmm. Generators also, there's something that's called the generator plateau, where they'll get really excited about something in the beginning, and then they'll be moving with it and they'll be all lit up, and then they'll hit this plateau where it's just kind of like, I'm not excited about this anymore. And for generators, that's always a sign of like, okay, either this is about to deepen and a whole new layer is going to open up, or it's actually time that you step away. So generators and MGs need to learn that pivoting and stepping away and maybe not finishing something because you've lost your pure excitement is totally okay. Generators and MGs also do really, really well with like the model of like having a lot of different plates moving. Like different programs, like a group, you're doing like all the different things. That's natural for them to just be like moving their energy into different places. Generators and MGs, they can work with people one-on-one, but their aura, like the MG's aura, is very transpersonal. So while they can work with people one-on-one, and I see this a lot with coaches, generators and MGs are actually designed to take the model that worked for them and then deliver it to people. Whereas like you and I, we can do that, but projectors are more person-to-person based. So we'll really feel into what that person needs and go from there, versus like, I'm going to take you through this model that worked perfectly for me. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So
I always say that to people too. So it makes sense.
That's projectors have a really hard time describing what they do, because it's literally, first of all, if you're a projector and you're a coach or you're a guide in any way, like you're literally just doing what you were designed to do. That's all there is to it. Second, it's hard to describe what's happening in your container because it's based on who's in front of you, because we're here for the other. So our energy is all about who's in front of us, and whatever comes out of that is based on what we're getting from that person. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So generators and MGs, I mean, do you have specifics around like?
No, you're good.
They,
I like what you're saying.
All the different plates, that's really good for them. They can just like, they can move mountains if they want to, if that's what's exciting to them. And the key piece here is excitement. When they're not excited about something anymore, they should not do it. So like MGs, I love finding MGs who have started a bunch of things and then been like, nah, I don't want to do this anymore, because that's exactly how they're meant to work. Mm-hmm. Projectors, what I just said about the one-on-one works really, really well for us. Like that's where we're really in our prime. Projectors can still like work with groups and work with people. However, that group, like projectors need to make sure they're always invited, seen, or recognized by who they're working with. So like the online world and being a coach is a great space for them, because when people come into our field and invest in us, that's recognition. That's like, I want your magic. Mm-hmm. Projectors need to be really careful about listening to, let's say, generators and MGs who have like scaled or created their business in a certain way. Like I always tell projectors, you need to take everything through the lens of how your energy type works. So what worked for them might not work for you. It might not come to fruition as quickly for you. And like, again, this is why human design in business is so cool. You are not supposed to look to what everyone else is doing. It just doesn't work that way. And like, I can tell you from my lived experience, when I started my business, like an oath I took to myself was this business is going to fully honor that I'm a projector with splenic authority. And I have said, fuck it to so many shoulds and rules. And it definitely wasn't oftentimes the most efficient way to do things, but it's worked out so well for me. And like, I was just having this conversation with two friends this morning. One is a manifestor and one is a projector. And it's the idea of like, we can literally, like, if we declare that we're going to do something a certain way and we can get fully behind that, our reality will shapeshift to that belief. Now that's like really simplifying it, because if you can't fully get behind it, everything that you don't believe, or every fear or should is going to come up, and you're going to have to transmute that. But like, this is true for all types. You can create a business that literally like shapeshifts to your design. If you follow your design, like your business can shapeshift to like working seamlessly with you. Let's see, where was I? That was a tangent.
I think you did manifesting generators.
Projectors. Projectors, honestly, like we could talk for like 3 hours about projectors in business, because so much of the business world is in opposition to how projectors work. I will add, like, I get this question a lot. Invitations, recognition, and sight, projectors will be like, well, how do I market myself? And the thing about like posting your writing or posting videos is people can opt into that content. So it's actually one of the best ways for us to market ourselves, is to just show ourselves and to show up like really excited, and to show up as much ourselves as we can be, because the internet is a really cool playground, because people can literally like opt in, and that's recognition. Like, I'm choosing to take in your content. So projectors aren't solicitors and cold callers. Like, if you're a projector and you've ever sought someone out to pay you, like, don't ever do that again. Like, just we don't solicit ourselves. We hang back, we share ourselves authentically, and people start to come. We also, like, patience is really big for projectors. Manifestors get to run their business whatever way they want, because they're literally designed to do things however they want, whenever they want. So manifestors, like, I always tell them, in your perfect world, you have generators and manifesting generators that work for you, because you're the initiator. You have big ideas and big visions, and you're really great at starting. And eventually you want to get your business to a place where you can start something, get to a point where you've like given your energy to it, and then pass it off to someone else. Manifestors are also, and like this is going to differ based on like your conditioning and your experiences, but like my partner's a manifestor, and he talks about how if he were a coach, he would want to be the once a year coach, because their impact is really strong and it's a slow release, especially if you weren't like fully ready for it, or it brought up a lot for you. Like, manifestors are not hand holders and nurturers. They're like, when a manifestor is in like their design and they're not dimming down their power and their impact, they fuck you up in like the best way possible. So they make incredible coaches, but their medicine is like, it's like strong medicine. Whereas a projector is going to come in, a projector works from the inside out. They're like coming in, and they're like seeing everything, and they're seeing what needs to go where, and they're seeing why you're like this and what your childhood was like and how everything is playing into it. And then they're moving you from there, and they're kind of like holding your hand. Manifestors are like, okay, I see the big picture, boom, next. And again, like, that's really hard to get to. A lot of manifestors, like a lot of their conditioning is like, how do I really not water down my impact? Because it's just, they're so conditioned into like dimming their power. Yeah, so manifestors, they can initiate, they can create, they can actually like go up to people and be like, I want to work with you. That works really well for them. Reflectors in business is like kind of something I'm still trying to figure out, because they can move from thing to thing to thing to thing. I would say what's really important for them, they need to make sure their environment and the people they're working with and anybody they hire feels really good, like really, really good. And they also need to be okay with the slow decision-making process. So like, I think if you are a reflector, like something that's great to do for society at large is to be writing or sharing in some way, just like what's going on with you and what your like thoughts and observations are. Because like, I could see a reflector doing really well as having like, they're in a sense, they can be like transpersonal channels where like, you know, when you read astrology reports, like a reflector would do really well giving us like reports on what's going on, because that they can see that. A reflector as a coach, I don't have any examples of it. I would love to see it. It would probably be such an intense experience with them to be sitting with that many different people. Like reflectors, because they're always just reflecting back who that person is, they would definitely need to probably work with less people. And it's the same thing with projectors. Like projectors need to be really careful and make sure that they are like emptying out their energy, because we take people in really deeply and we don't really have like a light switch to turn that off. It's just always happening. So like I know for me, if I do like 3 calls back to back, I need to go like shake my whole body and burn something and like just like get the energy moving. Because we'll go really, really deep into people, and we need to learn to like come back into our energy and be like, okay, how am I feeling? Am I tired? Yeah.
Love it. So where can people hang out with you, find you, do all the things? Tell us about the projector guide and anything else too.
Yeah. So I made a guide. It's a PDF download. It's 75 pages. It's called The Projector's Guide to Thriving. It's essentially, I attract a lot of projectors because I'm a projector, and I know that's the same for you. So I get a lot of projector related questions. So this guide is like the projector starter kit. Like if you buy this guide and then you want to come get a reading from me or work with me, you've just jumped, like you know so much of the foundations that we can now move into the nuances. So that's for projectors. I am planning on making guides for every type, but if I'm being like totally transparent, it hasn't been like the most exciting thing for me. So I've just been like waiting for it to get exciting again and waiting for my spleen to be like, all right, let's do this again. My website is just www.pilarlesko.com. I hang out on Instagram and Facebook a lot, and it's just my first name and last name, Pilar Lesko. And I'm not going to say a lot of stuff, but on my car ride down here, and like this is a good sort of window into human design. Like I've had a lot of coaches tell me, and a lot of people like, oh, you should have a program. Oh, you should have a program. And like for me as a projector, I wait for things to come through. Projectors are very feminine, so we actually like birth projects out of us in like a very feminine way. And I'm an intuition-based projector like her, so I wait till my intuition is like, now's the time. So I haven't had the desire to do a program, so I haven't done a program. And on my car ride down here, I got in the car and I was listening to her podcast, and there was like one thing she said, and it was like light switch, and like an entire program downloaded into my head. Like the name, the pricing, like literally everything just started coming through. So anyway, I do human design readings. I do a embodied human design reading where you get to work with me through the lens of we're looking at your design, but I'm also coaching with you. And then I have private coaching, and that's honestly like where all my passion is right now. I've moved away from readings and opened up my container for more coaching because I'm having so much fun doing it. And I don't know when this program is gonna be created, but it's happening.
I love it. Yay. Thank you so much
You're
for
welcome.
hanging out with us.
Yeah,
and
this is cool.
This will be on the podcast too. I saw like a bunch of people jumping on saying hi and what their design type was. So we will put it on the podcast probably in like the next 2 weeks. So you guys will hang out, and then I'll make sure to put all like the links and everything that you're talking about in the notes too. All right. Bye guys. Thank you.
Bye.